In today's live lesson, we're going to talk about how you need to clean, maintain, and store your ukulele properly to ensure that it gives you the longest life it can as your musical instrument and companion with this journey of playing the ukulele. To start here, what I want to talk about is cleaning the ukulele. And truthfully, this is something that I'm a little bit more lax on than I should be. And I think most people are too, but a little bit of care can go a long way in ensuring that your ukulele is in tip-top shape for playing. The first thing is whenever you are restringing your ukulele, more on that in a moment, that's a good opportunity to give it a little bit of TLC. And what I like to do is I like to use lemon oil, which is made for instruments, and like a microfiber cloth to basically just give it a little bit of a refresh. Mostly on the fretboard. The fretboard builds up grime from your fingers playing, and it's normal for your fretboard to have a buildup of this stuff. This is a pretty new ukulele. I got this one in December, and if I kind of scratch along the fretboard, let's see if I can lift up any grime. Yeah, just a little bit. If you look, can you see the, kind of hard to see, but there's a little bit of grime buildup there just from, the few months I've owned this ukulele already. It has a little bit of that buildup. So if you've had yours longer and you've put in more hours, it's going to have a lot more of that. And that's where lemon oil really comes into play. This is lemon oil that's cleaner and conditioner instrument care. And what's nice about this is it's really meant for the fretboard. It's meant to be able to clean and protect it. And I just use a microfiber cloth and kind of give it a good scrubbing. If the grime has caked up a little bit, has built up, you can use something like a toothbrush to actually help get that grime away, or really fine steel wool as well. What I would recommend is if you're going to do anything more than, the lemon oil cleaner on the fretboard with a microfiber cloth, is I would contact wherever you bought your ukulele or your instrument maker and ask what they recommend. Different builders will recommend different things. Different finishes can, work with different things. So it kind of depends on the build. This ukulele, for instance, has this like UV cured polyester finish on it, which is really strong, and I can clean this with just about anything. But on some of my other ukuleles, putting some chemicals on the instrument could wear away at the finish, and that's the worst thing we can do. This is all about how to maintain your ukulele, not how to destroy it. So when in doubt, contact where you bought the ukulele or the instrument maker and ask what they recommend. With this though, realistically, if you're playing a ton, doing this 2 or 3 times a year is a good amount. If you're not playing quite as much, doing it once a year is totally fine. I would say I've probably done it less than once a year on average in the 20 years that I've been playing ukulele, but trying to do it more regularly now because it does make a difference when you keep up with it as opposed to waiting 4 years and then trying to get it, all down. But with that, as far as the body goes, oftentimes just, using a microfiber cloth and giving the body a nice wipe down is enough to kind of get some of the oils with your hands off the instrument. In fact, if you keep like a microfiber cloth in your case and you just kind of give it a quick wipe every time you're done playing with it, you can do a lot to protect that finish because the oils on our hands are not the best thing in the world for the instrument. It's not like it's going to cause a ton of permanent damage right away if you don't wipe your ukulele down every time you use it, but just nipping it in the bud can be helpful. So I try to keep a cloth in my case for that very reason. Otherwise, when you're restringing, you can also kind of wipe down areas where the strings are covering and things like that. So as far as cleaning the ukulele, there's not a lot to it. Some people go a little bit more overboard with it than others. Find what works for you that keeps the ukulele, in the shape that you want it to be in, and find that regimen that works for you. And when in doubt, again, contact the makers for what sort of products and things that you can use on your instrument. I mentioned do this when you're restringing the ukulele, right? That's a big deal with maintaining the ukulele is restringing. One of the questions I get asked more than any other is how often should I change my strings? And usually when somebody asks that question, I respond with, well, it's probably time to change your strings. Because if you have to ask, you probably have waited long enough. String changing is a really funny thing. It's it's subjective, right? When a string set kind of goes bad. but they objectively do get worse as you play with them and as they age. I like to think of strings as like tires on a car, right? They're meant to be replaced. And it's not just how much you use them, but it's how old they are too, right? If you put on a brand new set of tires on a car and then you let it sit for 10 years and you come back, oh, the tires are brand new. No, they're not. You don't drive with those, right? Same type of deal with strings, only on a much shorter time scale. If you put a new set of strings on your ukulele, you tune it up and you put it in a case for a year and come back to it, it needs new strings because the strings do go bad as the elasticity sort of wears out from them just being on the ukulele. Personally, I like to use Diodario strings. I'm not endorsed or sponsored or anything like that. I just love these strings. These are the EJ65T, formerly known as the J71s. These are the Jake Shimabukuro strings. It's the same set that he uses that he sort of curated for Diodario, and it gets the tone that I'm looking for. These are nylon strings, and they are very hard tension, so they're thick, and a lot of people don't like them. It helps if you're playing with nails to get good tone with them. So I don't recommend these to everybody. Really recommend them more to people that are trying to get the type of tone that I'm looking for and can play with a little bit of nails. If you don't have that, another string that's great that I recommend are like Savarez Alliance strings. These are wonderful strings and what I would be playing with if I didn't play with nails and wanted that thicker string. And then there are other great companies like Worth Strings or Uklogic or PhD strings. A lot of those are fluorocarbon strings, which are different than the nylon strings I mentioned here with Diodario. And they tend to last a little bit longer. If you're looking for duration of strings, fluorocarbon tends to be best, and that duration can be, as much as 6 to 9 months. As much as, that's pushing it to the absolute limit in my experience. And so, fluorocarbon, great for that. If, however, you're going for like nylon strings, oftentimes we replace these strings every 3 months or so, and that's actually pushing it just a little bit with a set like this. The nylon just tends to go bad a little bit faster or get a little bit kind of duller in their tone profile. And so it kind of depends. A way that you can tell that your strings need to be changed other than age is if you take your finger and you actually run it underneath a string like I am here. See how I'm just putting it underneath the string and going up and down? If you feel little notches in it, that means that the string is ready to be replaced, similar to tread on a tire, right? We talked about the tires being too old, needing to be replaced. Well, if you put on 50,000 miles on them in the first, couple months, that would be a lot of driving. They're going to be lower on the tread. Your string's tread is marked by just running your finger along underneath the string and feeling for little indents from where the fret wire essentially is wearing away the string. If you feel a bunch of indents as you run your finger up and down, it's time to change your strings. Now, quick note. If you're really scared of changing your strings, maybe you've never done it before, you're worried you're going to screw something up. First thing is, there's not a lot to screw up. The worst case scenario is you just need to buy another set of strings. So buy 3 or 4 sets so that you're comfortable if you make a mistake and cut something too soon. This isn't a video on how to change your strings, but if that's something that's scary to you, it's okay to take it to a music store and have them change the strings for you. It's fine. A lot of people say you should learn to do it yourself. And I mean, sure, it's another skill to have, but man, if it's causing you stress, just go to the music store and have them do it for you. No big deal. That's totally fine. As long as that music store is not Guitar Center. If you have a great Guitar Center near you, then go for it. But I've had some unsavory experiences with it. But I digress. It's totally fine to have someone else do it for you. So we've talked about kind of cleaning the ukulele, lemon oil kind of being the secret stuff for that. Talked about strings, knowing when to change them both from age as well as the wear with that. And, the single most important thing, I think, when it comes to maintaining an ukulele and kind of storing an ukulele is really its humidity. And this is going to be the bulk of what we talk about today because I've got some stories with humidity and the types of problems it can cause and issues that can arise from it. And it's no joke. So our ukuleles, for the most part, are solid wood instruments. Yours might be a laminate, in which case it is less prone to these things I'm going to talk about. But if you have a solid wood ukulele, these are things you really need to keep careful consideration of. The humidity is essentially how much moisture is in the air. And instruments are built in environments of humidity that are targeting around 50% relative humidity. So with that in mind, instruments made in Hawaii are usually built in shops that are trying to draw some moisture out of the air to keep it at that 50% because Hawaii is a very humid place. Instrument manufacturers in Texas or somewhere, much drier will be using humidifiers to keep the air with more moisture in it for the same, reason, but opposite effect, to keep the humidity about that 50%. When it gets to your house, it doesn't magically hold at that 50%. It changes to whatever your home is going to be. And just because your home is somewhere where it might be very humid or very not humid, doesn't mean it's going to be that way in your home. So a little bit of a story time. I live in the Seattle area, very humid here. The relative humidity very rarely drops below like 60% where I live. I live very close to the water. It's humid here. And so in my studio here, which is kind of like a basement, basically, I was like, well, it's got to be fine, right? And so I would just leave my ukulele here on the wall all the time because that's why not? It's going to be the fine humidity, right? And over years, I developed problems with my ukulele. I would develop buzzing because the wood is shrinking and I didn't realize what it was. In fact, the neck on my ukulele even warped due to the lack of humidity control down here because I finally bought a little humidity reading device. And when I set it all up, it was 29% humidity in this room. And that was in the winter. In the summer, I'd get about 60% or so. Which is almost worse because now it's fluctuating like 30%, which is just not acceptable at all. And I do this for a living. You'd think I would be thinking about this more. And I was thinking about the humidity, but I didn't realize indoor could be such a big difference. In fact, our heating in our home isn't even forced air, which forced air heating really will rip apart your humidity levels. We have radiant heating, so I thought we were just totally fine, but no, we weren't. And it really caused some problems that I had with an ukulele. And that's due to that lack of humidity control and just not being in the right environment for the ukulele. So now, knowing that the humidity is much lower down here than it should be, I take the utmost precautions to make sure that my instruments are correctly stored and maintained so that I don't ever have a problem like that again. And I hope my horror story here can help you prevent having a horror story yourself. My favorite product nowadays, this is not sponsored, although Bovita, if you're watching, I use your stuff a lot. This is a product called Bovita two-way humidity control. I believe these were originally made for like humidors and things like that, for like cigars. But they got into the instrument game, and they're basically these like gel packets. They look something like this. And when they're fresh, they're really jelly. And when they aren't fresh, when they're dried out, they get really crispy. And this is amazing because what this does is it keeps the humidity at whatever the percentage is that is on the label. In this case, 49%. Perfect humidity for a musical instrument. Really, we want between like 45 and 55% is our target range. So this is perfect. Now, this little pack isn't going to keep my whole room at 49% humidity, right? So what I need to do is I need to put these in the case with the instrument. And I need to keep the case shut and closed completely while it's being stored to keep this humidity at the right percentage. That's cool because they make all sorts of like different products for this. This is holds 2 of these humidity packs. And you can put it in, lay it over the fretboard, put it in the sound hole, all sorts of different types. And so now I've got these all over the place. I've got tons of these packets, and I put these in the case with my ukulele. And I can tell if my ukulele is too dry because these get kind of crunchy if that's the case. In which case you can just replace them, but also you can kind of rehumidify them, funny enough, because they are two-way. So if you put them in somewhere that's more humid, they tend to get better. I don't know the shelf life of these. I guess there is an expiration date on the back. This says it expires in 2024. I think I picked it up about a year ago. So they do last a good while. But if your instrument is very dry, you might notice these get crusty fast. And that shows you how much moisture your instrument has been missing. The problems with humidity too, with a lack of humidity rather, well, we'll talk about both lack of and too much humidity, but with too little humidity, the wood dries out. And this can cause a number of problems, including the wood to warp, the wood to crack is the most common thing that can occur. A lot of times people will develop buzzes on their ukulele from this sort of shrinkage that's taking place on the instrument. So if you are buzzing on a string that you weren't before, that's probably why. Not only that, but if you have a fretboard where you can see the fret wires out like this, if you run your finger along this should be relatively smooth. Like you'll feel your fretboard, but if it's like kind of catching on your fingers as you're going down and up, it's usually indicative that your fretboard is too dry and it actually, is not humid enough, not being stored in a humid enough environment. And so that's another way you can kind of check and tell with the humidity. And so there are other things that they make for humidity, things like this is what I originally had. This is called a guitar humidifier made by Harco. I don't know. This is old. This is something you basically submerge with water, let it soak. This thing softens up and retains moisture, and then will release the moisture in the case to increase the humidity levels. And then when it gets dry and crusty like this, you're supposed to refill it. I only have this for teaching purposes now of showing that there are other options like this because I just use these packs. This has made life so much easier. So if your ukulele does have problems, like maybe you've developed a buzz, whether it's due to humidity or just time, there are lots of different things that you can do to help maintain your ukulele with that. So one thing I want to talk about right now is how to remove buzzing a bit from the ukulele. So there's two primary causes for buzzing on the ukulele, and those are going to be your nut and your saddle, which is the white parts of my ukulele here. The nut is going to be responsible for any string that buzzes while open, and the saddle is usually going to be more responsible for any buzzing that happens closed. Now, this is implying that your ukulele was already well set up at one point and the frets are well dressed and other things. If your ukulele has never not buzzed, there could be another problem. This is more about maintaining a setup rather than doing a setup, right? So if a new buzz has occurred, this is more the video for you. But if you can buzz on an open string, what that means is as the string is vibrating, it is hitting one of these fret wires. And it means it's too close to the fretboard. Bigger, thicker strings tend to buzz more, so you can try by swapping in a string that is smaller. The other thing that you can do is raise the nut. And the way that you do this is actually kind of cool. If you look, you'll see that there's a little slot for each string. What you can do is you can take a little piece of paper, so you can literally take like a piece of a Post-it note, right? And just rip off like a little itty bitty piece of paper like this. And put this piece of paper in between the string and the nut. And I don't think I'm going to do this right now because it involves polling and stuff. But essentially, this piece right there is trying to go between the string and the nut. And what that will do is it will raise it up. And you might notice your open string buzz will go away. And if it does, you know that the nut was the problem for the buzz, which is kind of neat. I've got some ukes that had a piece of paper in them for years and just prevented the buzz. Proper setup will fix that, but good temporary fix. If you're fretting your ukulele out of fret, I'm going to make this thing buzz. You're getting a buzz like that. Then what that means is your saddle probably needs to be raised. So if you have a pickup, you're kind of out of luck. You got to do the thing we're going to talk about at the end here. But if you don't have a pickup, take the saddle out and take like a business card and trace the saddle around it and cut it and put it under and then put the saddle on top. So you're kind of making a sandwich with the saddle, the white piece here, the business card set into the bridge. And so the saddle just gets raised a little bit. It raises your action, which therefore gives more clearance for the strings and can allow that buzz to go away. Kind of cool, right? Now, those are the two like at-home fixes for buzzing, and sometimes that's not enough. And you're going to have to send your ukulele back to get fixed. I've done this a number of times. In fact, I just got an ukulele back from Kanalea, the one that I mentioned that had the problems with the humidity. I'm guessing is the reason for it, with the neck warping. And so we had to do a neck reset and other things. And they set it up for me, and I had them set up the action a certain way to a certain height so that I wouldn't get a buzz for how I like to play. And that's all kind of normal with this stuff. In fact, just before this, I had an ukulele lesson this morning, a private lesson. And he mentioned that he was getting a buzz on the first 4 frets on his C string. And he was like, is this normal? And I just started laughing because I've never in my entire life had an ukulele I couldn't make buzz and that didn't have some buzzing problem at some point in its lifespan. It's very difficult to get an ukulele that won't buzz, period. But when you're playing, normally and you're buzzing like crazy, that's a problem. And you definitely want to do something to get it fixed. The things I would check are the humidity, make sure it's being stored correctly. The other thing is you can try to do the shim on the saddle or on the nut to try to raise it, see if that fixes it. And then at the end of the day, it's okay to take it into a reputable luthier or a factory if you're on the islands or whatever else where the uke was built, and get it fixed for, with maintenance. Just like a car is going to need to go in for maintenance occasionally, it's normal for your ukuleles to as well. And so it's just kind of part of owning these amazing instruments is they have problems. And I like to think of it like cars, where the nicer car you get, the more problems you tend to have with it, but the better the driving experience. To an extent, nicer ukuleles are that way too, right? Because if you get a solid body instrument, that already requires a little bit more maintenance than a laminate, because now you have to worry about the humidity. You have to make sure that the ukulele is stored correctly. So that's more work, but man, is it worth it when the tone is that much better too. So I've rambled a bit now about, correctly cleaning, maintaining, and storing your ukuleles. These things kind of all blend together. The gist of everything that we've talked about here is clean your ukulele with something like a microfiber cloth, where you can just wipe it down when you're done playing for the day. When you're restringing it, you can use some lemon oil on the fretboard to give it to clean it and kind of rejuvenate and protect it. If you want to use any other cleaners on the instrument, contact the ukulele maker or the shop that you bought it from and ask what they recommend, because each and every instrument maker is going to have a little bit different guidelines for that. We then talked about strings. Change the strings every, with fluorocarbon strings every 6, maybe 9 months is pushing it. 6 months is usually a good thing. With nylon strings, it's usually about every 3 months. All of this is subjective, but strings do wear out, just like tires on a car. Both time and wear, where you can feel underneath the string, and if you feel some notches, it's probably time to change the strings. And then the most important thing today is humidity. Your ukulele should be stored at about 50% humidity. And you might think that where you live is great, but inside your home might be another story, like I had to deal with myself. And that's why these types of products are so great, to make sure that your ukuleles are stored correctly so that you don't develop problems with too little humidity, which can cause things like cracks and buzzing and other problems. Too much humidity and the wood can swell and cause all sorts of other issues. And so, keep it in the case with the humidity packs. If you want to keep your ukulele outside of its case, just make sure that it's in a very safe environment with very controlled humidity going between about 45 and 55%. If that's the case, then you should be good. So I'm going to answer any questions that you all might have. I'm going to look in the chat here to see if there's any. And then I'll also look on the Rock Class 101 forums. Every month we do one of these live streams on the second Tuesday of the month. And if you can't make it live, you can always check out the forum to be able to leave your questions, where I will then answer them. So let's go ahead and see what the questions were here. Looks like we have a few silly questions here, which I always appreciate. Just a few completely hypothetical questions related to maintaining an ukulele. Number 1, if someone splashed root beer inside an ukulele, is there a way to get that out, or is it just kind of permanent? I don't know. I think you'd have to call Dr. Pepper to get that one done. I would highly recommend, I don't even know. Is this, try to dab it out best you can and call the ukulele maker and see what they recommend. I would strongly recommend not drinking ukulele not drinking root beer near the ukulele. Number 2, if someone were to glue googly eyes, say 450 of them, onto the surface of an ukulele, would that negatively affect the sound at all? It would affect how you hear the ukulele, but it also would affect how the ukulele could be seen, or how the ukulele sees. It would be bad. 2 of them are already glued on, so 2 probably not as much, but 450 for sure. The third question here, if an ukulele strings have never been changed since its purchase 4 years ago, is that bad? Not bad, but you definitely should change them. You'll notice that the ukulele will sound so much better with new strings. It makes a very, very big difference. Next question's here from Surfer J. I'd be interested to know if any household items you can use to clean the fretboard during a string change. I've been using wet wipes. So contact the company that makes your ukulele, or where you bought the ukulele from. Different finishes respond to different chemicals in different ways. So a recommendation for what I can use with my ukulele might not work for what you use with yours. So I just recommend contacting them. Kmore925X says, is there anything I can do about strong buzzing sound from my string, or is that something I have to take to a shop to fix? So we talked about adjusting the nut or the saddle of the ukulele to see if that helps. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're probably going to have to take it in to get it permanently fixed, and then the humidity will make a big difference with that too. I have ukuleles that develop buzzes because they've gotten too dry or whatever else, so something to consider. Looks like Vicky Khan says, I live in a dry climate and I use 3 Bovita packets in my case. It still only stays at 27%. Have you tried the kind you put water in? No better with those. What should I try? So I guess the question is it only 27% inside the case? If that's the case, pun intended, that is quite dry. And so it could be that when you open the case, the reading gets messed up a little bit because all the dry air is coming in right away. So it might not be super accurate, but I think using at least 3 of those Bovita packets, maybe up it to 5 or 6 of them, to make sure that your ukulele is stored at in the ideal environment. I also strongly recommend, if you're going to keep your ukes in one room, use a humidifier in that room to try to help offset it a bit. That's what I really need to do down here. Now that I've learned that the humidity is all sorts of messed up. So it's pretty crazy how big of a difference the humidity will make in terms of your instrument's health. And it's a big deal, as I hope you've gathered from me talking about the horror story that can happen of ill humidified ukuleles. So, all right. Looks like there's no other question. Oh, no, there we go. June E says, hi, Matt. Does it matter how old the strings are before you install them? Or is it under tension that they age? That's a great question. To an extent, it doesn't matter. I mean, if they're 10-year-old strings, I wouldn't put them on. If they're a couple of years old, I think they're going to be fine. They probably, even when you get a brand new set, I don't know when they're manufactured. Does it have a manufacturing date or an expiration date? I'd be interested to know. Generally speaking, though, you should be fine unless they're really old, because it's the tension that wears them out. Andy says, if your ukulele has a pickup, check whether it may have worked a bit loose. That caused severe buzzing for me until I realized what it was. Then it was fairly simple to retighten. Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up. So if you have a pickup, this little nub here can get loose. And if it gets loose, you can get some nasty buzzes coming from that. So you could be freaking out. I had the same thing happen to me once, and it's like, oh, just need to tighten that. And now, oh, my buzz is gone. Cool. Also with that, you can have problems. No, I'm not gonna be able to show you the angle, but there's wires in there because of the pickup. And I had a buzz on this ukulele shortly after I got it, and I kind of moved the pickup just a little bit. The wire was touching the soundboard, and that caused a buzz. So pickups can cause buzzes in a variety of ways, but this one cracks me up because I've had at least 3 or 4 students over the years like, man, I'm getting such a bad buzz. It's such a signature sound of a buzz. It's like, yep, tighten up that pin. So good stuff. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. If you're watching this live and you'd like your question answered, please leave it right now. I'm going to check real quick on the forum and stuff just to make sure there's no questions that I missed. Let's see, none there, and none there outside of root beer questions. Oh man. All right. Very cool. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. I strongly recommend that you contact, where you bought your ukulele or your ukulele manufacturer for any other, feedback with this. This is some of the stuff that I do that I've learned over the years. And this is incomplete too. I've got more that I want to learn on upkeeping an ukulele and maintaining it. I want to learn how to set up ukuleles and all sorts of stuff, and not a lot of resources out there for it. So as long as you can do some of these little things, you can really help prolong the life of your instrument and prolong the time between when you will need that maintenance to happen. And when you do get the maintenance, it's okay. It's part of it. And have a great luthier, who you can trust do it if you're able to. So as always, thanks so much. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Again, we do one of these live streams every second Tuesday of the month, and I'll look forward to seeing you all at the next one. Thanks so much. Take it easy.